Welcome to The Productive Life with Megan Minns. I am so excited for this week's guest, Joyce of Modern Creative Pursuits. In this week's episode, we are talking all about how so many of you listeners and new business owners are waiting too long to take action. The one question you need to ask yourself to overcome this tendency, this pattern, how you can step into the role of being a CEO, and mindset. Not only Joyce's mindset journey, but how you can start incorporating mindset into your business and life as well. I'm so excited for this week's episode, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Productive Life podcast hosted by me, Megan Minns. This is the podcast for entrepreneurs who want to be more productive in their business and their personal life. Because as a business owner, your business and personal life are connected, and we can't talk about one without talking about the other. Each week, you'll learn about productivity, organization, personal development, self-care, business strategies, and more. And now, let's get started. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to have Joyce on the podcast today. Joyce is one of my good friends, and she is a ex-9-to-5er turned calligrapher, online educator, and business coach for creatives. After creating a few courses and opening an online shop, Joyce started to help other creatives go from hobby to business, also that she could help fellow creatives build businesses doing what they love, but also so that she can be a work-from-home dog mom to her 2 rescue dogs, Pancake and Bee. I've known Joyce for a while now, and I'm so excited to have her on the podcast, so let's go ahead and get the interview started right now. Hey, Joyce, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. And I'm so excited for the listeners to get to know you as well, because you've been one of my business friends for a while now. So I would love for you to just take a minute and introduce yourself so everyone knows a little bit more about what you do and who you are.
Great. No, I'm super excited to chat with you, Megan. You were on our podcast, so I'm happy to be on yours. And hey, everyone. I am Joyce. I'm an ex-9-to-5er turned calligrapher. And then there was a pivot there where I have now become a business coach for creatives.
I love it. Yes. Joyce and I feel like transitioned into coaching kind of around the same time period, which was really fun to see that transition happen. Because when we first started getting to know one another, you were really specialized more in the creative space, and I was a full-time employee. So it's been a journey for both of us. I know you really focus on helping other people, like new business owners, get started in their business. And I know we were talking before we started recording that there's one thing that we see so many new business owners doing that can be a really big mistake. I know I don't believe that mistakes are like an end-all be-all, but it can be something that makes a huge difference. And that would be that they're waiting too long to take action and do a variety of things. That's what you've seen as well, right?
For sure. I mean, there's just this waiting for various reasons. I think at the bottom of all of it, it is fear, but then you start to say you're waiting for, the perfect time. Until my skill set is better, until I'm, back from vacation or whatnot. And it's just at the end of the day, fear speaking, but just the waiting continues and continues. And what I see happen is creative entrepreneurs or people who want to be creative entrepreneurs not become them. So I work with a lot of people who want to be side hustlers or who really don't like their day job and they want to be like creatives full time, but it just doesn't happen with all of the waiting that I see going on.
Yeah. Do you feel like this is something you experienced as well when you were growing or starting your business? Did you struggle with the same kind of tendency to wait too long, or was that something that you just instantly knew not to do?
I think in the very beginning, I instantly knew not to do that. And I think it was because of my desperation to really leave the industry that I was in. I was like, nope, blinders on. Like I'm doing this and that. I'm doing an Etsy. I'm going to do workshops. But it's funny because I think maybe a year after really starting is when I started to wait. And that's when my fear started to settle in about, should I actually do this other course? Should I actually pivot? And that's when I got a little bit paralyzed and started to wait. But again, like what was I waiting for? It was really just fear of something new.
Yeah. And what helped you? How did you work through that when you realized that that's what was happening? Was it truly just like a moment where you realized it was happening and you decided to do things differently? Was it a longer process? Like how did that realization happen for you?
Oh man, I remember it specifically. It was like July maybe of last year, so 2018. And I just had a freak out. Like I gave myself the space of July to figure out my life and my business.
No pressure, right? No pressure.
Yeah. No, I knew that I wanted change, but I knew obviously it wasn't happening because something was holding me back. So I gave myself the space to really figure out, okay, what do you really want to do with business, Joyce? What are the excuses you're giving yourself? How can you work on whatever it is, like your mindset or changing your beliefs, whatnot to overcome that? But July of last summer, at the time of this recording, that was a tough July.
Yeah. I mean, you said you gave yourself space. Was that something I'm trying to figure out how much like awareness you had in this experience? Cause I think so many of us don't realize we're waiting until we have a moment where we're like, oh my God, like, what am I doing? So did you know that there was something happening and you intentionally said, I'm going to take this whole month and just give myself the space? Or was it one of those moments where like, it just happened and you didn't really put a lot of planning around it? It just like happened.
I think for me, it was a buildup. So I definitely recognize like my behaviors and maybe freaking out at things that normally wouldn't upset me, or just really feeling, and I feel like a lot of creative entrepreneurs, you know, they feel like that there's moments of like, I just feel lost and I really don't know what to do next. And that kind of just like hit me like a bus around that time. And I realized that I just needed to give myself the space. Now, actually thinking about that and saying, oh, I realized I needed to give myself space. Maybe 6 months prior to that, that's not a thought that would have even occurred to me, right? So I got to that realization by just doing inner work. Like Megan, I'm a Virgo. I'm like type
it's
A.
Virgo season right now too. You're
Virgo
thriving.
Season.
Okay.
Yeah. And like, that's just not how I normally am. But being an entrepreneur, you know, and just kind of charging ahead in the very beginning, I didn't really work on mindset. And that just wasn't something that was really, I don't know, in the forefront of my mind until maybe about a year and a half into owning a business. And then I started to, you know, just be open to things like, I don't know, oils, crystals, cards, journaling, all of these things kind of opened me up. And so that's why when I was feeling lost, last year, I was able to realize that. I was able to recognize it. And I had, you know, a few tools that I could work with. And that's why July was just like open space last year.
That's awesome. So when you're giving yourself space, because I really think it's helpful for other people who maybe are listening who realize maybe they've been doing the same thing. Maybe they've just been waiting, but they don't really know how to stop this pattern because like you said, there's a lot of fear often. That's the root cause of the waiting. And so if someone was in a similar situation to where you were in July and they're like, they've just been waiting. They're waiting for things to be perfect and they are fine. They're just like ready to take action and stop doing that. But they haven't really resolved those issues of fear or like the deeper issue. What is something that you would encourage them to do that could help them start to like break this habit or pattern of waiting?
I think besides, you know, taking action, it's really thinking about, but what's the worst case that could happen? Like, what's the worst case if I charge a little bit more? What's the worst case if I start an Etsy shop and nobody knows me or I don't have a following on Etsy yet? What's the worst case if I try out workshops and I end up, you know, not liking it? What's the worst case? Well, in that example, you don't like workshops. That's okay. Figure out something else you like to do in your business because you got to set the rules, right? So, and even like, oh, what if my business fails? Like, are you really going to be homeless living in your car? That's probably not, like, that is probably the worst case, but that's probably not going to happen. So once I go there to that dark place of what's the worst that can happen, you realize like, it's not so bad. So I guess I can take small steps and get started because the worst case is not so bad or the worst case is likely not to happen.
I love that. I think that's so powerful too when you get to that worst case scenario and you realize as soon as you say it or identify what it is, you kind of already instantly have a solution for what you would do next.
Totally.
And so at that, like that realization, I think is so powerful because you're like, wait, I'm a resourceful person. Like even if the worst case solution happened, like I already now know, like I already kind of instinctively know what I would do next.
Exactly.
And I think that gives us just a lot of confidence in ourselves and power to just show up and experiment. Because that's really the approach you're kind of talking about, is viewing your business as a little bit of an experiment where you're willing to try things and realize you don't like them, or you don't want to do them, or they didn't quite work for you, and try something different the next time. Do you feel like that's kind of how you approach your business?
I definitely think so. I'm definitely also not a person to switch whatever I'm doing like every month, for example. I gave like course creation a good run. I gave Etsy ownership a good run, and I still teach workshops. It's been about 2.5 years now. That's still a part of my business. But you also need to know when it is time to pivot, when it may be time to change because you're not feeling it, you're not enjoying it. And I think it's also just really important. And it's really, really important for people to realize that you're the CEO of your business. Most of us, I think, are raised to be employees. You go to school, you're an employee. And so even though because it's your name, like on the credit card or whatnot, that you own this business, we still show up as employees. And what are we waiting for when it comes to asking for permission to change or to try something new? There's no reason to wait. You can grant yourself that permission like right now, if I could snap my fingers. So you also instinctively know like what feels good or not good. So go in that direction.
Oh, I love that. And I think you're spot on too, the idea that so many of us, whether or not you were raised to be employees, which I think a lot of us are, like you were saying, since we go through school and you're raised to like expect to go join a corporate career. But so many of us start businesses and don't actually experience freedom or flexibility in our lives, even when we're a full-time business owner. I remember, and I'm sure you experience this and so many others have, that when you're a side hustler and you're like building your business on the side, like you can't imagine how life could be better than being a full-time entrepreneur. You're like, I'm going to have so much freedom. I'm going to only do what I want to do. Like, it's going to be the best thing ever. And then lo and behold, you make the transition and you're like, whoa, okay, now I have to actually figure out what I'm going to do all day. And so many of us fall back into the pattern of working the exact same way we worked as employees. Oh, we need to start at 8 a.m. We'll wrap up around 5. We'll take a 30-minute lunch break. Maybe we'll eat it at our desk and we don't leave the house, or like we don't change the way we work. We just keep working the same way we were as an employee. We just have a different boss. And that means now you're also the one making all the decisions, which is very hard. How can we break that pattern? Do you have any thoughts on like how someone can maybe take that first step in truly building the freedom or acting like a CEO instead of an employee?
I'm like, we don't have video as we're recording this, but if you could see me, Megan, I'm like laughing. It's so true. It's crazy because it's like the grass is always greener. If I had 40 hours a week to work on my own business versus this job, I would be doing X, Y, and Z. And it's like, no, that's likely not the reality. It's not the reality of a lot of people that I know that transition from 9-to-5s to entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm getting flashbacks. I'm starting to fan myself.
I know. It's painful.
But I really think that when it comes to the first step, it is owning that you are the CEO. It's uncomfortable sometimes to say, oh, I own my own business, but really being able to confidently just say that out loud, I really think it starts there. Whatever your job title you want to give yourself, or I am a small business owner, I am a creative business owner, I am a professional calligrapher, I'm an illustrator, with a small business. So I think it starts there with like that title, which it's weird because I'm not really like, call yourself whatever you want. I am, a digital dog mom CEO. Like, why not? But when you're first starting, I think that is important because it helps you be a little bit more confident in yourself and your business and your abilities and what you're doing.
It helps you view your responsibilities in a greater way, which I think even when if you're a solopreneur, I think it's really easy to not even think about that kind of stuff. Like, what are your roles? What are your responsibilities? Oh, you're doing everything because you're the solopreneur. But when you spend so much time in that like state of just being the person executing or like the technician role, then you're not really growing and developing your like CEO skills because you're not really thinking from that place as well. So I love that idea of just taking a first step to just kind of like start calling yourself a CEO and step into that role and embrace it. And I think there might be some mindset blocks that pop up for people. Like maybe they feel like they don't know enough to be a CEO, or maybe it puts like pressure on them, or like, well, my business isn't making enough money. I think it's always interesting that when we kind of step into a new identity like that, there can be some like limiting beliefs that pop up. Have you had, I know you and I are kind of like similarly into woo-woo and mindset work as well. Do you feel like you've experienced in your coaching work as well any like common denominator limiting beliefs that affect people who are starting a business or growing a business?
Oh man.
I mean, I know there's a ton, but like, is there like, I guess similar to this, do you feel like there's a limiting belief around like why people wait? Like, is there a fear, like they feel like they need to be perfect, or I don't know, anything?
I think it can come from that for sure. So it can come from perfectionism and comparing yourself. When it comes to creatives, it's like, oh, well, my work is not as good as so-and-so's, so I can't charge that much, obviously. And that's funny to me because your skill set as an artist, you will continue to get better, but that doesn't mean that you can't, go into business now or charge whatever it is you were thinking now. Like, why not? Because you're going to just continue to get better. So you can continue to like increase your prices. So that's one thing I see, like waiting on prices, for example. Or another thing is waiting for everything to be planned, which is so crazy to me, but I completely understand because I am this ultimate planner who needs things in Asana. Like I am the planner, you guys, but you cannot plan that far ahead. I don't think that you can, when you're just starting, have this 5-year business plan, because until you're in the thick of it, you don't know really what you do want to focus on. You might be called to do something else. Whatever you start doing may not feel good to you after 6 months. And then you truly find what you feel aligned with. So it's kind of a waste to wait and plan this big, goals, this big plan when you haven't really started yet and you haven't really dove in yet.
Oh, that's so true. I was over here just like nodding my head while you were talking, because I remember so distinctly sitting at my office when I was working in corporate HR and I was like starting my business, and I was like, oh, I have to make this like business plan. I think when you're in the corporate world, you're also used to a lot of the like corporate terminology. And if you like Google how to start a business, you're probably going to be like, make a 5-year business plan and like a revenue plan and all this stuff. And I was like, I don't know what I don't really know what I want to do. And I thankfully was able to take action. But even while I was taking action, there was always this like lingering doubt of like, what's my actual purpose here? Like, what's my reasoning for this? Like, what am I trying to do in 5 years? And I felt this like huge pressure to answer that. And gosh, like I still like, even what am I going to be doing 5 years from now? Like I could make a guess, but I know it'll probably be different than I guess even right now. And I think when you start to get comfortable with like, you don't have to know that far away. Like you really don't. And it shouldn't affect what you do now. The farthest I vision out is like 3 years. Like 3 years from now, what would my ideal life and business look like? Any farther than that, I struggle personally. Do you have like at this point now, Joyce, do you have like a 5-year plan, or are you kind of the same way?
I'm kind of the same way. And 3 years honestly sounds like really long to me when you mentioned 3 years.
I have like this loose idea to like help guide me of like, I want to feel this way. You know what I mean? And it's like allows me to tap into some dreams that feel like I'm not going to, oh, am I going to be speaking on stages across the world in a year? Like maybe, but like 3 years, sure. You know what I mean? Or like whatever your dream would be. 3 years has been a sweet spot for me, but it's definitely not a 3-year plan. It's like a 3-year brainstorming vision exercise.
Now I want to go do that for myself, but I think
you should. It's a good exercise, but it's definitely not a plan. Like it's not a plan that you decide is going to happen and you're committed to it and you stress out about it. It's like an exercise.
I think that's a great exercise. Everyone who's listening should go do it. But I think you also remind me, Megan, that it is important to have this kind of bigger picture. Like you can have this big picture, this big vision, this big why. I call it a big why. But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to have this detailed step-by-step plan on how to get there. But you can use that big why, that vision to kind of drive your business and your life. So what I mean by that is, my big why, and I'm sure I said this to Megan before, is like, I want to own a rescue dog ranch. Like that's like a big life why, right? I want to rescue all the dogs somehow. What I can do now is rescue my own dogs. I want to foster soon. Let's see how that goes. But in the grand scheme of things, there's going to be a ranch. It's going to happen. It's my big why. But what does that have to do with my creative business? Well, this is something that I think I learned actually working with Mariah. Megan was, I can use my business now while I'm still impacting people. And it is something I enjoy in the day to day. But if there's a way that I can, use the revenue that I earn from my business now and start to donate or start to set aside money for that ranch, or is there a way that I can actually really scale my business so that it kind of runs itself so that I can go full on focusing on my rescue dog ranch, so it may not make sense to have this creative business and then have this, my big why. I've shared it with all the listeners now, but you can, have that vision and figure out how you can use your business as a vehicle to get there, even if they're not quite aligned.
I love that. And I definitely remember us having that conversation. And I was like, yes, this is how you're going to do it, Joyce. This is how you're going to hit it. So I totally remember that too. And I do think having that bigger vision is helpful. But to go back to like the original point you made is also that like, regardless of how clear that vision is for you right now, even if it's not super clear, you can still take action right now on what you want to do next. So it's like I think it's great when you have some kind of vision, whether it is as like amazing as Joyce's, or even if it's just like this vague idea that like, oh, I want to be owning a house and I want to be in like this different city, or I want to be, happier, or like want to have more money, like whatever your vision is, it doesn't have to be the most detailed. You can still take action today that will hopefully get you closer to that vision, just one step at a time, even if you don't know exactly how they're going to connect. Because Joyce definitely was taking action before she realized that that action could even help with her big why. And so it's kind of like through action that you even realized you could actually do both at the same time, which I think is really cool. So for everyone listening, like whether you've done the 3-year vision exercise or not, or if you know your purpose here, or you're totally lost and you have no idea, you just know you want to start a business and be a creative business owner, or do be coaching, like whatever you want to do, you can still take action. And I think going back to what Joyce had said earlier, like the combination of really stepping into that CEO role and kind of like going through that worst case scenario, you can start taking action today and overcoming some of these fears and limiting beliefs that you may have.
I'm so morbid. I'm like, what's the worst case?
Oh my gosh, no. It's the exercise I take all of my clients through all the time. I'm always like, okay, well, if that happens, then what? And they're like, well, then this. And you kind of do it a few times and you get to like the real root fear. My coach has done this with me before. It's a really common exercise you can do with someone or on your own. And it's just crazy how every time that root issue might actually be something you hadn't even acknowledged was the root. Like that your real fear is that worst case scenario, and you hadn't even realized it. And then as soon as you do, and then you're like, oh, it's not that bad. You're like, oh, okay, I'm fine.
I've totally coached myself through this using like a journal and like just kind of speaking to myself, but journaling like worst case. Okay. And then what, Joyce? And you just continue to write until you really do get to the root of it. So if you don't want to say it out loud, you can write it down.
You can just write it out. Love it. Yeah. I think I have a personal question that I'm just curious about, Joyce. So I know you and I are similar. We're both planners. You're a type A, you're a Virgo. I'm not a Virgo, I'm a Pisces. But you are into some of the, like you mentioned, crystals and oils or cards. Like, I just would love to know a little bit more about that. I don't want to call it a transition, but like how you started incorporating mindset work into your life, and what that looks like for you now, because a lot of the listeners have either been through a similar thing where they were type A and now they're really incorporating mindset, or they're kind of in a gray area where they're not really sure how mindset work can can benefit them and if they can even really do it if they're type A. So I'd just love to hear a little bit more about like your journey into mindset work and what that looks like for you now.
I think it started for me with books. It started, and I'm not talking about, I'm picking up A Course in Miracles. Like I haven't even tackled that one yet. We didn't start there, but it started with books, things like You Are a Badass or money mindset books from Denise Duffield Thomas. So I definitely started with reading because that felt like comfortable. You know, I enjoy reading. I have always enjoyed reading. So why not pick up this book and thinking, you know, maybe I'll get some money type of business tips. But really the books like that I just mentioned, they do deal a lot more with mindset. So it started there. And I think that started to open me up to this world of, man, you can control your thoughts. Like you don't have to be this victim or this effect. You can be a cause. Right. So it started from there. And then I think I know there's still a thing like oils, essential oils and crystals, like huge, but I think that it just started to pop up on my Instagram feed, honestly. And like, oh, well, what's this about? And I'm supposed to go to a crystal store and like pick the one that feels good. Okay. Like I think I can do that, you know, whatever rock is calling to you. So it just was this slow progression over, and I think that now that I'm on this journey, it's going to be a lifelong journey. Right. But it started with books and then it started with just kind of being more exposed through social media and then just being brave enough to like walk into that crystal store and pick whatever felt good. And then it became, you know, self-coaching through journaling. Like I said, how I kind of do what's the worst case scenario. I can do that with my coach, or I can just do it myself through journaling, and just really the power of it. That is something for me. And that's something new. So like at the time of this recording, we're, you know, in the summer of 2019. And I'm going to say maybe just in the beginning of this year is when I started to incorporate journaling consistently and pen to paper. That in itself was a journey, because I was like, no, it's like you're, I don't know, 11 and you think someone's going to read your diary. So I'm like, I don't want this on paper. Like I'm going to try it on the iPad, or I'm going to write myself notes on my iPhone. And really when I finally got it onto pen to paper, that is when the magic happened. And I'm so consistent, and it just allows you to recognize your real fears, recognize your thought patterns, you know, write down what you're truly grateful for, things that you may not realize in your day to day, but when you sit and think about it, write it down, like it's clear in front of you, like you're doing okay, you're going to be fine. And sometimes we need it to be like literally in front of us as you write it.
Oh, so true. I was taking notes while you were talking because there were so many little goodies that you were dropping. And I think what was really interesting to me since you just mentioned journaling, I feel like this is people view journaling, people who aren't currently using journaling, especially for mindset work in particular, I think often ask me similar questions. I'm curious if you get some of these too, but they like don't understand how it's different from like having a diary. And I'm always like, it's different. We're not just like logging our day. We're like sitting down and doing a journaling exercise. And so many people, like you said, don't want to deal with doing it on pen and paper. Like so many people try to find other ways to do it. Can I do it in Evernote or Day One or like these other things? And I'm like, theoretically, yes, like I'm not going to control you, but like if you actually want to benefit from it, like the benefit pretty much only happens for me when I'm doing pen and paper. Like it never has the same impact. And you said you're the same way with that?
I'm totally the same way. And it's funny that you said Day One or One Day, whatever that app is called, because I did use that. And then it's not like I sit here and I review my past like written entries, right? Maybe if I feel called to it, but I don't do that every day. But with One Day or Day One,
I forget. I should Google it, but I don't know.
It's one of those. I never reviewed them. And I think that, and they just sat as like this kind of file. I mean, you could download it as a PDF. I'm like, PDFs are not magical. Like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
But it took me a while. I was one of those people, and like, someone's going to read it. I just want it digital.
I mean, no judgment. I get it. I love digital stuff, but it was like you said, the magic happened when it was with pen and paper.
Yeah, I think if you are going that route right now, and maybe if you are wondering, well, why is journaling not some magical unicorn with sprinkles and rainbows? Try paper. Just try it for one day.
Yeah. and see what happens. I
Yeah.
love that. And I think what's really cool about your journey into mindset, I like how you said it really started with books for you.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was similar. I think it was a very slow and long journey where like I was reading some of those books, but not really open to some of the things they had to say. And so I think for me, it came to a point where earlier this year I was finally really open to it. So I do think there's a degree of like openness you have to be when it comes to mindset work, just like being willing to be wrong about something or like have your thoughts changed, be coachable. I think those were really key for me, but I do agree that books are a great starting point. And I'm really glad you mentioned You Are a Badass and Denise Duffield Thomas's books. I think those are great books to start with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it kind of sounds like you did what I did, where I really followed my curiosity,
Totally.
which is a concept I obviously got from Big Magic.
Love
and I was
that
just
book.
like, how fun would that be? Big Magic was probably like a really big changing point for me. Even though I read it last year, I was like, the idea that I could follow my curiosity was really intriguing to me. And that's how I viewed my mindset work, similar to you with like the crystals. Oh, that sounds fun. So I'm curious. So I go to the crystal shop and now I'm obsessed and I really want to go there to do Reiki sessions and stuff.
Ooh.
And I'm like, I don't even know. Like I'm just in this place of play with mindset work. Like I read the books that sound fun to read. I go to the crystal shop because it sounds fun to do. I incorporate tarot because for me, that's fun.
Same.
So I think that's interesting. So it's cool that it's the same for you. I feel like a lot of people I've talked to about mindset work kind of have the similar approach where it's like this fun playground where you're just like playing and testing and following your curiosity.
You got to dip your toes in, see what feels comfortable. I love that you mentioned Reiki because now I'm like, oh yeah, like let's clear our chakras. My throat chakra is blocked. I'm like, oh. So I love it.
You don't have a blue crystal by your throat right now? I think it's blue, right?
It is blue. I actually like, it is blue. And I went maybe like 10 days ago and I just bought like a bunch of blue crystals. So it's funny that you said
I straight up have 3 blue crystals on my desk at all times. So I'm with you on that. But I think that's really cool. And I just really appreciate you sharing your journey into this because as everyone listening already learned, like you are great at planning, like you are a type A, like you are into all of these things, but you have still followed your curiosity and become open to mindset work. And you've seen, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've seen a lot of positive impacts of doing so, right? Like, would you say that you started your transition into coaching around the same time as the mindset work? Or like, did one come first? Like, were they connected?
I think that it happened all around the same time. And I do have to say that, if you're someone that's listening to this and you're open, you've dipped the big toe in, but you're still not feeling it, like, that's okay. I think that when you're ready for coaching, when you're ready for a life change, when you're ready to be more open to, if you want to read the Course of Miracles, go for it. When you're ready for that, you'll know. So don't feel as if you have to force yourself. Well, I really wanted to work on my mindset, so I'm going to get all the books and I'm just going to start reading and I'm definitely going to crystal store this afternoon. Like you don't have to plan it or anything. Like just go with it and you'll know. Maybe it's life circumstances. Maybe it's just the right time, whatever it is, you'll know when to kind of dive a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. And like I said, I think that now this is just a lifelong journey for me.
I'm so glad you mentioned that too, because I think for me, I've been doing a lot of the same strategic stuff, like productivity methods, the way I manage my time, like goal setting, like a lot of those things for me have been something I've done for a long time. And what made the difference in my life and in my business the most was when I did go down the mindset journey. So for me, I feel like it's so important that I'm trying to be careful the way I talk about it because I wasn't like we both talked about. I was at a place where I wasn't really open to it for a while. And I still had a business that was successful and like I was doing things and I was making progress. But there was that moment where I did know, like there was just a knowing that I wanted to follow the mindset curiosity more. And I remember the way I really got started in that too was by asking a friend. So one of my business friends her name's Liz White, and she actually went through a journey where she really was teaching more like logistical stuff. And then she made a mindset journey and now is like a full-blown mindset woo-woo person. I love to follow her online and we're friends. And I actually was having a session with her and I asked her at the end, I was like, so how do I get started? Like, what do I do from here? And I think it was really helpful to just start asking that question because I was curious. So I totally agree with what you're saying though, Joyce, that like when you have your moment where you're curious, like I would encourage anyone listening who's curious about any part of mindset work, I would encourage you to follow it because usually that's like a great beginning of just your own unique journey because not everyone who is into mindset work does tarot cards, or does crystal. Like everyone's different. And I think I came from such a regimented and structured background that it was really freeing to have this idea that like everyone's mindset journey is different. And like what works for you might be different than what works for someone else. And what you benefit from or enjoy can be different. And there's no like rules. And like it can look like whatever it wants to look like for you, which was really freeing for me as a perfectionist to know that there wasn't this like barometer I was being compared to of like how mindset I was. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not out here, I don't know, burning sage every day. Like if you are, cool.
Yeah.
But it has to feel good for you. And I love that you mentioned Liz White. Like I love her. She doesn't know me, but I love her and I love following her. And it was actually like not an affiliate, people, but it was actually her journaling course because I am so regimented. And if it's not in Asana, it's not going to get done. Like that is the kind of person I am still today, like in my business, that's how I am. But I needed something like a course or some kind of guide or step by step. And I purchased her transformational journaling course. And, she came with a video. She talks about it. There's a lot of prompts that she shares in her workbooks. And that was the game changer for me, actually. And I think I've like DM'd her.
You should tell her that.
I think I have DM'd her and told her that.
I was like, you have to tell her.
And now, and so she just kind of kicked off that journaling experience for me. And I may or may not go through those prompts. I don't think I do anymore, but I've just learned through Liz, like what kind of works for me when I am journaling or taking, how I am feeling and then knowing how I kind of want to explore that through journaling. It all started with Liz.
I love that. And isn't that such a fun testimony to like, or testament to the idea of like ripple effect that you can have when like Liz has shared before that when she was pivoting her business, and in her case, her pivot was into doing mindset work as like her business function. When she was making that pivot, she was like very nervous and had all her own set of like limiting beliefs and fears that she worked through in that pivot. And it's so cool I always love evidence of like when people make these pivots in their business and in their life that can feel a little scary, but they do it. And then you just see the ripple effect and the impact they're able to have be so exponentially greater. It's so cool. So I'll have to tell Liz we talked about this. It's like a whole, like a testimonial for her, but it's also just, I think, reinforcement for everyone listening that like you have the capability to have impact as well when you overcome your fears, when you stop waiting to take action and when you're really open to whether it's mindset work or whatever you're in, but just being open to new experiences. And I don't know, I just think so much is possible. I get so excited when I'm thinking about the impact other people can have when they finally leave their fears behind and start taking action on their dreams. So thank you so much, Joyce, for this incredible conversation, for sharing all of your tips on how people can really stop waiting and start taking action, overcome those fears, and your mindset experience too. That was really valuable for me to hear your experience and thoughts on mindset as well. So thank you so much for being here. And I would love to take a minute for anyone listening who wants to connect with Joyce more and learn more about her. Joyce, where can everyone find you?
Sure. So on Instagram, I used to be Write Pretty Things because calligraphy, and I kind of miss those days sometimes, but I have transitioned. I know. No. I still have it. It's a picture of pancake on there. But I'm just _ Joyce Christine over on Instagram and on the interwebs, Modern Creative Pursuits. And I also have a podcast called Modern Creative,
which you should absolutely go subscribe to right now while you're listening. And you can go listen to my interview on their podcast as well. And Joyce, you have a freebie for everyone who's listening as well, right?
I do. So I have my creative biz roadmap, which just outlines the 4 simple steps that you need to follow if you are looking to start a creative business, a side hustle, full-time, whatever it is. It is super simple. Try to make it easy for everybody because I want to prove to people that it doesn't have to be hard. Like, it's not overwhelming. You can do it. Here's some steps, because I understand if you are similar to me and similar to Megan that you want steps when you're going forth and trying something new.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's where you can find it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joyce. All of those links will be in the show notes beneath this episode. And I hope you guys go subscribe to Joyce's podcast. And thank you again so much, Joyce, for being here. It was so much fun to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. I loved having Joyce on, and I hope you did too. Be sure to click the links beneath this podcast in the show notes to find out where to download Joyce's Creative Biz Roadmap. And again, that's a free download that you can get by clicking the link beneath the show note, as well as any of the other links and resources mentioned in today's episode. If you enjoyed this episode, I know Joyce and I would both love to hear from you, especially on Instagram. So please feel free to share this episode to your Instagram stories and tag both Joyce and I with your favorite parts. And that way we can not only get to know you better, but also share it with our communities as well. So thank you so much both to Joyce for being here and for you for listening. Thank you for listening to the Productive Life Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, it would mean so much to me if you would share your biggest takeaway on your Instagram stories or wherever you hang out. This helps me understand what you find the most helpful so that I can make more episodes and resources like this. If this podcast has helped you at all, please take just 1 minute to leave a review on iTunes so that we can help spread the word about the Productive Life Podcast with others who may enjoy it. And last but not least, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to get the latest episodes sent to you directly. To learn how to work with me one-on-one or get instant access to freebies, trainings, templates, workshops, and more, be sure to go to meganmins.com right now. I'll see you in the next episode.